quite a few years ago, I was in a theatre company when I first graduated from university, and there was 5 of us, 5 blokes in this company. It was kind of, I guess, kind of absurd physical theatre stuff we used to do. But in one particular piece that we did, particular show, there was a part of it which we used to call the God game, and in it, one of the chaps I used to work with, a guy called Gavin, had to pretend to be God. It was a hard act to carry off, really, because at this particular point in the show, he was dressed in this bright yellow ballerina tutu and a kind of singlet and Reeboks. But he used to make a really good job of it, actually. And he would kind of say something to the effect that he was God and divine architect of the entire universe and the knower of all things, and he was prepared to answer any questions. And at that point, the rest of the company, would ask him questions, unrehearsed questions. You never knew what we were going to ask him. And then we'd open up to questions from the audience. So if you were in the audience, you could ask a question of God. And in one sense, this was a kind of joke, and there was always a lot of laughter around it. But the point was, or the direction that Gavin had for that moment in the show, was that he absolutely had to take it seriously. And to his credit, he used to make a really fantastic job of it, and taking it very seriously. He wasn't allowed to play it for laughs. He had to listen to each question very carefully and respond as wisely and as divinely as possible. And some of the questions were really hard. You know, he would get asked questions about the nature of evil, or about, why is there suffering in the world, as well as very trivial things like, is my wife cheating on me, that kind of thing. And that's trivial, doesn't sound trivial at all, but you know what I mean. And he would try to respond, as I say, as wisely as he could to those questions. And one particular question that another member of the company used to ask was, what is the shape of the human soul? He used to ask. It was like a regular question that we used to ask, just to give us a bit of security. What is the shape of the human soul? And Gavin would answer in different ways, but his most common answer to that question was pear-shaped. He'd say, what is the shape of the human soul? And he'd think about it and say, pear-shaped. Which was, quite a nice answer, I always think. I don't know who listens to these videos I'm making, but if that response doesn't make any sense to you, it's because there's a phrase in an idiomatic phrase in England that if everything's gone pear-shaped, it means things have gone terribly wrong. So the idea that the soul is pear-shaped means there's an implication that the soul has gone wrong. But I don't know why. Well, I do know why that came up. In the last video I made when I was talking about creativity, I happened to use the word, in passing almost, the word fractal, which is the kind of mathematical property of certain entities in the world. Now, but if you're thinking about that again, I guess that was informing my thinking when I was thinking about this show. Here comes the wind. Okay. And I suppose if I was asked that question now, I would have to say it's a fractal. By which I would mean that if I was forced to acknowledge the existence of some kind of divinity, whether that be some kind of supreme being, or whether it be some kind of undivided state of universal consciousness, or whether it be some kind of pantheistic nature, divinity, whatever, something like that. If I had to acknowledge the existence of that kind of thing, and then try to kind of relate that to individual human existence, again thought of in that kind of metaphysical way as having some essential quality, if I had to think of those things, and if I was forced to think, what is the relationship between that great big thing and this tiny little thing? What is the relationship? And if I was forced to think of what the relationship might be in mathematical terms, as I say, I think I would have to think of it in terms of a fractal. Certainly I couldn't think of it in terms of a fraction. It doesn't make a great deal of sense to me to think that this kind of undivided sense of everythingness can be obviously divided, can be broken up into little bits, and these little bits handed out at the moment of ensoulment. So we all get a little fragment of God. That doesn't sound right at all. Doesn't make sense. So the mathematical relationship of part to whole, fraction, to entirety doesn't make sense to me. Nor do things like mirror symmetry or some kind of holographic relationship. Those don't appeal to my sense of rightness either, whatever that means. As I say, I think the one that makes kind of sense is this kind of fractal sense. Which is interesting, I think, because certainly in terms of these videos, I think about trees a lot. I talk about trees quite a bit, because I walk amongst trees quite a bit. And trees are fractal objects, at least partially. If you take an individual branch off a tree, it looks like the whole tree. Just like a cauliflower, which is also a fractal, isn't it? If you take an individual floret out of a cauliflower, it has the same basic shape, or mathematical relationships between its parts that the whole object has. And coastlines are fractal. If you take a kind of Google Earth picture of a coastline, and then do a really close-up photograph of a coastline, the shapes look very similar. And I think they all just look similar. I think the idea of the fractal is that they are very similar indeed at a kind of mathematical level. So the level of the measure of complexity of a coastline at various different angles is the same. So it has a kind of fractal relationship. So as I say, if I had to think about the shape of the human soul, as Gavin used to say, I would probably say it's a fractal. Although I think pear-shaped is still funny.